Something interesting I found out today, Adrian. I don't know if you know, but
What's that?
did you know that essentially 1/4 of all of your bones in your body are in your feet?
I did not. That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, there's 26 bones in each foot, which is 52 total bones in both feet out of the 206 bones in your whole body.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I just found that out today and thought I would share it on the podcast. Nothing to do with movies, but hey, it's all good. Thank you for joining us back here for the Drive Back podcast. My name is Garrett,
And I'm Adrian.
and today we have a first timers, which is what, Adrian?
It is where both Garrett and I have not seen the film, so we are both watching it for the first time.
That is absolutely correct. And today we have one that I have heard a lot about and put it on our schedule because it looks like something that we would both enjoy and has received quite a few accolades. So it's going to be interesting to talk about. But with that, we'll go ahead and dive in. Today's film is Mirai. Released in 2018, it was directed by Mamoru Hosoda and stars Rebecca Hall, John Cho, and Daniel Dae Kim. A young boy encounters a magical garden which enables him to travel through time and meet his relatives from different eras with guidance by his younger sister from the future. It was nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Animated Film.
Makes sense.
First time watching this movie. Again, I think I'm the one that put, I said I'm the one that put it on the schedule. Just saw that it received quite a bit of acclaim, and one of my favorite movies of 2022 is directed by the same director. So I wanted to go out and check more of his work. And I guess I'll go ahead and start out for the first time watching. I was really pleasantly surprised.
Why surprised?
I didn't think I was going to enjoy the film as much as I did.
Why so?
Because I've had a history on this podcast of movies with children in it, and not enjoying them as much as I should have or could have. And
I will say, okay, yeah, I can see that.
and I was amazed that I kind of came out of this initially kind of annoyed at the main character, but totally, ended up loving the character by the end of the movie. So, what did you think, spoiler free, about Mirai before we dive in?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I think it's a pretty niche film, like a lot of anime tends to be of this genre. But I thought it was really good. I thought it has a really great message. And I thought the kind of the key twist, or whatever you want to call it, was really interesting and definitely had my attention for a majority of the movie. And it kind of had me waiting with bated breath between the moments where that thing was happening. So yeah, I think it's good.
Interesting. Well, I'm very keen on exploring one of the comments you just made before we, after we dive in after spoilers. But if you are looking forward to watching Mirai, you can watch it on Netflix in both its Japanese and English dubs. I watched it in English. I don't know what you watched it in.
I watched it in English as well. I actually didn't know that the original was there.
It is, yeah. It's usually you have to kind of go into like the audio settings underneath the Q bar or whatever, the buffering bar.
Well, usually it says like in Netflix, like available audio or whatever, and I just didn't look.
I suppose sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we both watched it in English. Had spoiler alert, had a great English voice cast. But let's dive right into spoilers. And the first thing I need to address, you said that this is kind of niche. And I'm curious, like most anime films
Are you thinking that this is a great entry point to show someone who's not into anime?
Not necessarily, but
That's one of the things I predicted that you would say.
But I think it's not like first on the list by any means, but I think it's still more friendly than a lot of other films are. I would say this is more friendly to show someone than Appleseed would be.
Oh, completely agree on that.
But the niche
I
part,
think it's I think it's niche because I don't think a lot of people would like this movie that haven't seen anime or animation of this style. I think the concept and the twist that it has is a bit out there, and it's not as linear of a story as I think a lot of people that would want to approach something that's like such a different genre. And typically you want people to be introduced in more like, oh, like here's something that's just like a little more clear and concise. And I think this one is just not something that I would show someone on the first pass.
I mean, I can see it on being on first pass, but I think that I have to completely disagree with the niche thing because I think this is one of the most identifiable movies that we've watched in a while, especially for someone who has siblings. Like this,
Absolutely, yeah.
100% like is more grounded. I mean, it has its kind of fantastical concept, but maybe it's just because like the videos should be coming out the same day as this. I watched all the Disney films, and on the heels of watching all the Disney films, this feels like something that would easily fit into that category, just animated from a different studio. But the story and the characters kind of feel something similar to what I would have seen in probably the newer films from Disney.
Kind of. I just think as a stepping, like I think you just agreed somewhere in there that it wouldn't be the first one you show someone. That's what I said. Like I just don't. I think this is. Yeah, I think it's up there. And like, if you've already watched a couple of anime films like Howl's Moving Castle or some of them more like just what I would argue are more like immersive experiences. I think this one is more like a. I don't know how to relate it, but almost like a Parasite movie of anime. Like it's more of a family study. And it's more of a relationship study, and it's a little more of a deeper plot. Whereas, like, if you're looking to jump into a genre, a lot of the times, not all the time, but a lot of the times, people are looking for like a cohesive narrative. Even if the fantastical element isn't necessarily what I was focused on, but like something that they can focus their mind on. Like, this is the concept, and this is what we're doing. Where this feels like it was an onion of a movie with so many layers happening in almost every scene. About family dynamics and what your kids hear and shouldn't hear and what they think and what the pets think. And so I just feel like that's why. It just seems like it's a little bit more of a niche type of film because it's a family study.
I can understand that, definitely. And I think I kind of, when I was latching onto the niche argument, was because of the more fantastical nature. Because I feel like we've watched My Neighbor Totoro in here. One of your favorite films ever is Ponyo. And those
but
are
much more of a narrow focused plot,
but arguably much more fantastic. Like
agreed. That's why I was differentiating.
So that's why I wanted to kind of get to the root of that, because I was like, is it really niche? And I
still stand by it. Yeah, it's niche in like the genre.
Yeah,
of the top or the topic is very niche in terms of like
I would definitely put it in between like Studio Ghibli, which is probably the best entry point.
Yeah, any of them, really.
Any of them. I mean, specifically probably Spirited Away, Grave of the
Spirited
Fireflies,
Away, yeah,
Wind Rises.
Sure, yeah.
But it's not quite on the same, like, niche level as, like, Perfect Blue, which is, like, a really cerebral storyline we covered almost maybe a year and a half ago.
Like, that one's certainly not a good entry point. I feel like that's
an incredible film, but not something that
exactly
you would show at the entry point. And I would say this doesn't quite hit that level.
It leans towards it for me.
It's in the middle, yeah.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and dive a little bit into the characters and the story. The young...
Voice acting, phenomenal, by the way, on the American dub.
Very, very, very well done. Initially, I thought that Rebecca Hall was a little wooden, and I was like, maybe that's just the character. And the character really opens up towards the end, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. And I was struggling to figure... Because I didn't look at the cast ahead of time. I was struggling to figure out who the dad was. And the dad was John Cho. From Harold and Kumar.
Really?
Yeah, and I was
that totally fits, yeah.
I was like, holy cow, that voice was so good in that role. And then the only real other bigger actor would be Daniel Day Kim, who plays the great-grandfather during
the younger version.
The younger version. Daniel Day Kim, the only kind of thing I remember him on from the show is Hellboy. He was the agent that helped out the 2019 one. He's been on a bunch of other stuff, too. But that's kind of the only thing on the podcast we've mentioned that he would have been on. But yeah, fantastic job pretty much all the way around. And I think it's easy to read into the character of Kun being very annoying, but he's also like 2 years old. And
yeah, he's a kid.
It's right at that age where, like, to get a little personal for a second, like, my brother was born when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I was at least a little bit more mature than Kun is in this movie. And at that age,
you had already done your first press junket.
Yes.
For the podcast.
I had done my tour. All the concept stages were complete. We did the previs art. No.
Guillermo del Toro themed your birthday party that year. That was a pretty big deal.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And then, the director of Lawrence of Arabia shot all of my early footage.
It's crazy that you don't know him on a first name basis.
David Lean. It's David Lean. I remember that as I was sitting here. But no, the fact that the character is like 1, 2, maybe a little older, because he is able to speak, but not like incredibly intelligently.
He's able to ask for what he wants and like say what he's thinking, but not eloquently at all.
Yeah, it really speaks to that age when you feel that when you get a new sibling, you aren't getting attention anymore because it's a baby.
Yeah, and I think they do a great job though of segueing. Like the first time, I guess I'll just spoil the fantastical twist is that like
we dropped spoilers already. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess I'll talk about it. Is like that he can see other people and other beings from different parts in their timeline, but they can't exist together in the same space. So it's like pretty much like out. Usually, it takes place outside in their little foyer. But I thought the introduction of the dog was a perfect like first intro to this fantastical idea.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people can relate. Because even though like I don't have siblings, I totally had multiple pets, and I know that pets get less attention. Like you just have a new puppy right now. Your family does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's always like you always tell us that the older one is like, I don't know about this new guy. Like it's something that I feel like humans just relate to so much if you've ever seen a dog, like at all.
Yeah.
It's like you just kind of get it. And I feel like that was just such a good point to lead in so that everything else became so believable.
Yeah, it was really interesting because did you pick up on who it was pretty
Voicing?
early? No, like the character when it was the dog.
Right away. Yeah.
Okay, it took me a minute, and I was like, "Is for a split second?"
Even through the fetch segment?
No, like up until the like, I would say up until because like it kept saying like, "Oh, I was replaced too," and I was like, "Oh, is this him older?" Like because I didn't know that
I didn't
happen.
think about that, but yeah.
But then then it's like, "Oh, they got rid of the good food," and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." But I think it's a melding, a little bit of that melding in the fantastical in one way that it could have been, like they could have just gone as dream sequences, and he's learning from these dream sequences. But I like it better as that kind of that tangible something that he steps into and he's interacting with.
And there's a real moment where it becomes super physical later in the movie where where his sister pulls him through space and time.
Yeah.
Which is like crazy. But I love that, again, the movie doesn't shy away from that. I really like when movies lean into their concept and don't like back off halfway through.
Yeah.
And like this movie did double down on it, which pays off. Like kind of in the middle, you're like, okay, at least I felt this way. I was like, okay, like there's the fantastical aspect. The one with the great grandfather was awesome, especially when you find out who that is. Mm-hmm. But I did feel like they were like, okay, like we're jumping back and forth a lot. Like I get it. But then the whole train sequence where like the losing and the whole jumping back in time to finding out like what happened, I just thought it really paid off in the end, and it was really well done.
Very emotional towards the ending. I think, I as I've said on the podcast before, I tear up a lot in movies now. I don't know what it is. Didn't quite do that here, but there was definitely like kind of like the feelings like you were going to. Especially when when you've had family members that you've lost, and then like the kind of things that have brought your family together or taken them apart, and every event being something that makes or breaks what your family is. But also, kind of as a transition, the moment when they show the family tree, and it's literally branches, and then there's like a leaf at the end of each. It's beautifully done, which leads into the animation.
Sure. Yeah.
Which sounds like there's something that you wanted to add to that.
Well, I was just gonna say that, like, specifically, I really like the moment where the whole movie they talk about the race that their great grandmother and great grandfather had said, where like she would agree to go out with him if he won in the race, and then you find out that like that might be myth, it might not be. Like everyone kind of just like throws it away. It's like that's crazy. Like
I've never heard that.
Yeah, and it's rumor, but then you find out when you go back in time that the race did happen. But that the great-grandmother didn't race. So the great-grandfather sprinted as hard as he could, and then she kind of jogged along and caught up after he fell. So he thinks he won, but she wanted him to win. And it just kind of tells the story of, like, had she not done that? All these little moments in all of our lives lead to the next one. And this ripple effect that, like, he and his sister wouldn't be here had that moment not happened. And then to lap it all the way back in, is those little leaves on the tree. All of those are decisions waiting to be made that lead to more decisions that will also look back at your decisions. Like, it's just this really cool kind of full circle story, which I'm always a sucker for. So that really got me. And the animation was really incredible.
I also did read into that a little bit too, that every leaf was a person in the family tree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like,
but I'm saying like, those
decisions.
people are the decisions.
Exactly. Yeah, very, very beautifully. And again, with the animation, gorgeous here. Definitely a mix of styles too.
The 3D parts were super interesting because they were rare, and it was really cool.
And really well done, especially the train station, which was very different than anything else.
Oh my gosh, the Lost and Found. If you get to that part in the movie, loved it. Thought it was so fun.
When you get to that part of the movie, you should definitely stick all the way through this movie. And then also like the animation with like the children's book with the whole like Mr. Mustache and the witch that then becomes his kind of adaptation of what he thinks of his mother.
Yeah,
is really that one almost like a jump scare in the train station when
That's so interesting though. I didn't think that's what he thought about his mother.
He literally says my mom's a witch several different times.
Yeah, and he calls her that to his face or to her face. But I guess I didn't realize. I thought that was just like, wow, that's so interesting because that's definitely what it is, 100%. But I saw it as like when you're lost and you see someone like, because I've had this experience when I was really young. I pulled on someone's arm that I thought was my mom, and when they turned around and it wasn't, and like that realization that it's not is like the end of your life feeling. As it was like, I remember immediately like starting to cry because I was like, I'm lost forever. So I feel like that's what I thought when it turned around and it like was so close but not. But you are 100% right in what that actually is. That is 100% it.
Yeah, 100%. And also like the animation, like you said on the Lost and Found, the workers was something.
It like switches, yeah.
It's something straight out of this like video game like Katamari Dynasty or whatever.
I love Katamari Forever.
It really reminded me of that kind of style where it's almost like paper mache, which was really cool.
Very much an angular, very like shoulders cut off in very sharp angles and like heads kind of in like geometric shapes almost.
Yeah, and one thing I also do want to touch on the animation is that this is the second film that I've seen from Mamoru Hosoda, and both of the films that I've seen, people are animated so much more realistically than I would say Studio Ghibli or a lot of other anime studios, at least that I've seen. But that doesn't mean that it's all 100% realistic all the time. There are definitely those little bits of like those, I don't want to say stereotypical anime moments, but like in the second sequence when he meets Mirai from the future, and they play the B game, like the animation of his face and the expression is more with your typical kind of anime series.
Yeah, like the eyes all white and the red face and like the little exclamation points coming out.
Like, but there's those little touches here and there, but like the rest of it is just so beautifully animated. So it's just definitely worth a shout out. Yeah, I mean that's the bulk of it for me. I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Again, I think it's definitely not a first foray, but if you do enjoy animation and haven't seen this one, definitely the one to go for. It's very, very entertaining. I still stick by the niche comment just based off of like the topic. Like this definitely isn't a frequent watch for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's definitely not one that I would like. You're not going to probably put it on for like a Friday movie night with your friends. Like it's a bit too
unless it's something
deep.
That you're in the mood for. Like the same kind of crowd that you would watch like Tenet with, I think would get a little bit more enjoyment.
Really? Because this is the Tenet of animation?
No. But like that same kind of depth that you're not. Maybe you don't want to watch something that's necessarily super straightforward. You put on something that's a little bit more. You're not quite at like super artsy indie film levels of depth and kind of up to interpretation, but you're kind of at that like Nolan level.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say if you want like a better definition of how I would imagine that movie night going, is this is a movie night that everyone will be silent during. Like, this is not a movie that like people are going to get to crack jokes at. Like, it's definitely going to be like a watch. So if that's the kind of deeper movie that it is, just that like it jumps that cliff into like you want to watch it, not have fun with it. Like, and not saying it's not fun, but that yeah, whatever. But I still stand by the niche comment though. I think it's a little bit less accessible than Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, and not to the movie's detriment at all. It's
Not
just,
at all. It's
yeah.
still a great movie.
It's on a
just little harder to
recommendation point
access.
of view.
Yeah.
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 It's definitely not the movie you're going to throw on for Friday night movie nights with the friends. It's not Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is something you could just throw on and laugh at anytime.
This is more like if your friend came over and was in like a very specific mood, and you're like, "Man, what's going on? Do you want to watch this like also kind of sad movie?
Want to watch this like super cool but kind of deep movie? Sure. Yeah.
Do you want to watch a 2-year-old hit a 2-month-old with a train?
It's not a bullet train. It's a Hasune or whatever it was called. But yeah, I mean, I got really nothing else to add. So I mean, I'm ready to jump into some final thoughts if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure. Oh, you know what? Hey, I'll go ahead and go first. I feel like you
Careful. Last time, it really threw you off to go first.
I mean, well, hey, got to keep me on my toes, But for Mirai, I said, while its messaging can be a little bit heavy-handed, it is forgivable as the film is a joyous, positive film that reinforces just how important family is through incredible animation, great performances, and a true childlike sense of wonder. Because of that, I really enjoyed this film, and I completely understand the Oscar nomination for Best Animated Film. With that, I gave it a 93.
Nice.
Will be a pretty quick and speedy addition to the film collection if I can get my hands on a Blu-ray.
Nice. I'm sure there's a cool steelbook or something like that.
Oh, I'm sure there is, yeah.
Again, kind of the same thoughts. I think this movie's a little niche. I'm glad I watched it, though. Definitely not a big rewatchable, but definitely one that I love that I have the ability to reference and have seen. Voice acting's great. Story's really interesting. The gimmick of the whole, like, plane walking, I guess I'll call it, is super, super cool. So because of that, I gave it an 85.
Alrighty. Well, those are going to be our scores for the film. Let's jump into what everyone else thought about the film. And Adrian, I need you to give me a guess what you think the critic rating is for Mirai on Rotten Tomatoes.
On Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to say the critic rating is a 93.
You are really close. It is a 91.
I went too high.
Which is
You were right on, though.
Yeah, well, for Rotten Tomatoes, which is kind of interesting. Usually they're usually a little bit higher or a little bit lower. But what did you...
89.
You're saying 89 for the audience?
Mm-hmm.
You're close again. It's 86 from the
audience.
I
knew it was going to be lower.
So close to you. So I was close to the critics and you were close to the audience.
Which, again, is often... I wonder if we did like an analysis. That's often the case. Yeah, I more represent the general audience.
As far as it goes, Rotten Tomatoes, their critic consensus says that the simplicity is what they said, and colorful warmth of Mirai's animation is underscored by a story with surprising and deeply affecting depth and emotional resonance. So, I think pretty much what we both said.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now, for bonus points, I mean, I'm not keeping track of points, but for bonus points, Adrian, what is the Metacritic score for this movie?
That's so tough. I'm going to hold at 88.
You are a little high. It is an 81 on Metacritic.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very low from what I thought it would be.
But what is interesting is that it does have, I think this is the first time a Metacritic movie that we've covered has had this, and that does have the little badge that says Metacritic Must See. So,
good to know.
So Metacritic does say it is a must-see film. But that's going to bring us to an end for Mirai. Adrian, if there's anyone out there, I mean, I know you keep saying the same thing every time, but where can people follow us online?
The Drive Back Podcast everywhere. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Here on YouTube, we post some extra stuff, but everywhere we post every Monday.
That is absolutely correct. And this Monday, actually, in addition to being the next episode of this episode of the podcast, not the next episode, that'd be crazy. In addition to being this episode is also going to be me doing a solo tier list for all of the animated Disney films.
Quite the endeavor, yeah.
Which is a long video because I have to explain and somewhat defend some of my choices. But that should be going live on this very same day. So if you're watching this or here listening to this, go to our YouTube channel and check it out. It's the longest
Double
video we've
feature.
ever done. It's almost a little over an hour. So strap in for some tearing.
How many movies total?
They're total, including so there are 2 films that I either could not find, which was Make Mine Music, which can't be found anywhere for some reason. The other one is Strange World, which comes out in November. Aside from those 2, it is 61 movies.
Strange World? How does it come out in November if it's part of the original? Or are you saying every Disney?
Every animated movie from Disney Animation Studios.
Every single one. Wow.
Yep. From
More
Snow White up through the most recent is Encanto, I believe.
Yeah.
Or actually, no. There was a film that came out this year? No? I think it was Encanto was the last one. Anyhow, beside the point, that's going up the same day as this, so it's going to be live whenever you're watching this or listening to it. Next week, we're going to have a franchise fever, which we haven't done in quite a while. We're going to be doing the Oceans films, which I believe we teased last week. Looking forward to that because it's going to be, I think, a pretty fun episode. Pretty wide range on the spectrum, too, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I've core 3. I just love. I grew up with them, so I have a weird spot for them. Not that they're great, not that all of them are great, but and then even the I hadn't seen 8 and I hadn't seen the original, so it's gonna be fun to talk about.
Yeah, and I've heard decent things about 8 actually. It's just it was underwatched when it came to theaters, but very excited to check out all 5. 3 of them seeing again. But that is going to be pretty much it. And if hopefully we make a decision sometime soon. But by the time that video comes out, we may have our first vlog video up if we decide to record at Halloween Horror Nights. So
sure.
Hopefully we remember to do that. And I bring a lot of phone charging stuff because it's going to be a long day. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We love you so much. We will see you all next time here on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.